Computer. Hello, Next Home Nation. I'm Wendy Anderson, broker owner of Next Home Next Step in Ashland, Ohio. Welcome today. Today I have not only a friend, but a local lender in the area. This is Dennis Reed from Fairway Mortgage of the Dennis Reed team in Mansfield. They are a preferred lender here at Next Home Next Step. Dennis and I have known each other for about 5 years now. I will always remember Dennis for one thing. He doesn't even know what I'm talking about today. I didn't tell him. When I first got my license, Dennis was the only lender to reach out to me and took me to lunch, and we had a great conversation. And I think that we've bonded ever since, and I appreciate and value Dennis's friendship. He's great. His team is great. I can't recommend them highly enough. So, hi, Dennis.
Thank you.
Yeah. Welcome aboard. So why don't you give us a little information about you and Fairway Mortgage and your team?
Well, thank you. But it's funny because that's one of the things I remember from first meeting you was we always have great conversation.
We always have great conversations. Yeah. Yep.
Covers the gamut. It's not all business, but
not all business. No, we talk a lot about our kids.
I always love your creativity and your creative thinking.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for the intro. I've been in this is year 20 for me in the mortgage business. So one of those milestones that I remember when I was brand new and I'd go to realtor meetings and I'd hear these lenders saying they'd been doing it for 20 or 25 years. I was like, oh, that's no way. You know, now I'm that guy. So so I've got a great team. This is an industry that I believe it's really hard to be good if you're just functioning alone. You got to get a great ops team behind you, and we're very blessed. And that's one of the unique features about Fairway. Most of what we do is based on the branch local level. We've got corporate there for support, and corporate does the underwriting, which I think is important. You got to have a little bit of space between origination and underwriting. You don't want everything. But we have our own processor, closer, all on staff, so we can kind of choose which files if something needs attention quickly. And it's what allows us to get things done, I think, probably faster than a lot of our competition. So, well,
you say fast. Let's just back it up a little bit because I'm going to brag on Dennis a little bit. One of the realtors in our office closed on a VA loan with Dennis recently, and I think it was a record for you, wasn't it?
It was.
It was. How many days did you close?
Somewhere around 8 that we had.
8 days from the day we received the contract to closing. That was crazy.
Something might have been 10 from start to clear to close, which means totally done. Was like 8 days. So
8 days, but then we had to wait till we could get the closing scheduled. So 10 days. That is crazy fast. That's even fast for a cash deal. So to go through the title search and title commitment and inspections, if they had, I don't know if that one had any inspections or not, and then underwriting, that was amazing. So the reason I asked Dennis to come on today, he has a couple of great programs. And so I kind of want to just share a little bit, a few of the programs that you have. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here and we'll go through a couple of those. So the first one is your pre-qualification versus pre-approval. I know, and you can see this, right, Dennis?
Yeah.
Okay. I know a lot of people will talk to their real estate agent and they're like, oh, well, I'm pre-qualified. Well, there is a difference between pre-qualified and pre-approval. So, and each lender is a little different. So Dennis, why don't you take us through the difference between the two as it relates to Fairway?
Yeah, and I can do that, but you kind of also just got to talk about the generalities within the industry as well. Pre-qualification to me means we've at least gotten an initial application and we've looked at credit. And we've probably even ran what's called automated underwriting, which is where we run the file through, Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac or Ginnie Mae system to see if they'll approve the loan based on what's entered on the application. So to me, that's what a pre-qualification is. but there's oftentimes no documentation there to back it up. So the difference to me between a pre-qualification and a pre-approval is that with a pre-approval, we've received documentation so that we know that the information that was entered on the application is actually accurate. And it's not that buyers intentionally mislead or lie. They just oftentimes they don't understand what can and can't be used on a mortgage application. They think that, you know, they made X amount of dollars last year on their W-2, they should be able to qualify based on that income. Well, sometimes you can't because, you know, different types or different forms of income have to be calculated in a certain manner, like bonus income, commission income. Some people even on just regular hourly income, if their hours fluctuate, it's got to be averaged. So, you know, sometimes what they put down for their income amount, once we get the documentation, we learn that the income is actually lower than that as far as what we can use to qualify. The same with assets. You know, it's not uncommon to talk to a borrower and they do the application and they put on there that, you know, they have this amount of money, and then we get the bank statement and it's a lot less. Well, they've saved 10,000 in cash at home. You know, sometimes we can use cash on hand, a lot of times we cannot.
So that mattress cash, we're not sure if that can be counted.
And people don't understand there's actually a federal law there that makes us document in large deposits, you know, undocumented deposits and anti-money laundering. And clients oftentimes say, what's wrong with cash? And I'm like, well, personally, I love cash, but you know, there's guidelines there saying when we can and can't use it. So that's the real difference. I went into an office I worked with a lot last year, and I asked, what's the biggest thing I can help with? And their response at the end of last year was deals falling apart due to pre-approval. And that's where I was talking. We got to talk about some of the generalities in the industry as a whole, because not everybody pre-approves the same way. Some people will give a pre-approval based on what I look at for pre-qualification. And they think, well, we'll document it down the road. You know, they're kind of praying that it works out. That's where deals oftentimes fall apart. Is they do a pre-approval and you know, based on just an application, and then they go into contract. Then they get documentation and find, uh-oh, I don't have as much assets or income as I thought I did. So that is really, to me, the big reason you want to get pre-approved. It's not for my benefit. It's for the benefit of the buyer. They don't want to get into contract and spend, you know, $300 to $400 on a home inspection, spend, you know, $400 on an appraisal, any money on other inspections, to then find out they can't buy the property. They could be out $1,000. Where if they would have just taken the time to get properly pre-approved up front, it would have kept them from losing that money. And we're not, you know, not to mention the emotional toll that takes on the buyer when they get down the road and find out they can't buy. So.
I know one of the questions we get, at least I've received from buyers, what about my overtime pay? Can you count any overtime?
You can. It's similar to your other variable types of income, though. The general have to be averaged. Anytime you have something that's variable, like, you know, if your hours vary or your commission or your bonus or your overtime, they want to see a kind of a track record, if you will, because we all, you know, most people know that you may get a lot of overtime this year, the next year, it may not be there. So they want to see what it has averaged usually over the last couple of years. Sometimes we can get by with just a 1 year average, but there's pretty much always an average that's being done.
Okay, so you're doing a pre-approval with our clients, and you get us a pre-approval letter with and we can do a specific amount or leave the amount off. And then you also have the Fairway Advantage, which we're going to touch on a little bit later on a different slide, but anything you want to say about that right here?
No, to me, tremendously valuable. That's why, I threw it in as an extra form in and of itself, because I think it deserves a few minutes just to discuss it alone. So,
Okay. All right. So then
yep,
in order for clients to get pre-approved, you provide them with a checklist of what they need to get to you for documentation. And so we have this checklist here, this pre-approval checklist. And so if you want to tell us a little bit about this.
Yeah, so this just kind of gives a general idea what to expect. We're always going to have a kind of a Q&A up front, because it's kind of like a get to know you, So
Yeah.
if you called me, Wendy, it'd be like, okay, well, tell me a little bit about what you're trying to do. What price range do you see yourself in? Where do you want your payment to be? How much would you like to bring to closing? All those kind of help guide us, because we have multiple programs, and you may qualify for multiple programs. Well, which one's actually best for you? So those questions usually help guide us to help figure that out. We had one the other day, and after a couple conversations, it finally came out. The most important of this thing to this borrower was they didn't want to bring really anything to the closing. They were okay with all these other things. They just really didn't want money out of pocket.
Yeah.
Well, that helps figure out which program to look at for them. So, because, different programs have different interest rates, so just because it's the lowest rate doesn't mean it's necessarily the best program for the borrower.
Right. Right.
And, everybody, I remember when I got into this business, I thought everybody, the end all of everything was lowest interest rate, but it's actually not. It's surprising how many buyers that's, obviously we want to be competitive, but that's not always the absolute most important thing. So, but that's what that Q&A really helps us do. Then once we kind of have the initial conversation with them, we get them to do the application. And that's usually done in one of about 3 or 4 ways. We can, people that don't like technology, we can do the application over the phone. They can do the office. I would say the majority of my buyers choose to start by going to my website, because it's easy just to enter the information in. Some people like mobile apps. We have a mobile app that they can do pretty much everything. They can do the application, they can upload their documentation, everything through the mobile app. So we try and give them options just based on what their preference is. But getting that application filled out is really step number 1, because that's going to let us take the first look at your income, your assets, your credit, and your liabilities, so that we can put it all together and try and get you, figured out which program. And then the next one, as we talked about, documentation. This is the one that sometimes we get the most pushback. People just want fast and easy. They're like, they don't want to send the documentation. It's truly not for my benefit. It's for theirs, because that is how we make sure that the pre-approval is valid. Again, we give them options. You can do it through the mobile app. You can, when you're doing the application on the website, you can actually upload your documents then. So that's what I kind of advise people that choose a website. I'm like, save these documents to your desktop before you start. Just upload them as you go. It's very simple.
Makes it so much easier.
It is.
So much easier.
Things have changed so much over the 20 years. I mean,
yeah.
Now pretty much everybody has access to their pay stubs and their W-2s online in the form of a PDF, so it's simple to do.
Well, a lot of them have it on even an app. If it's with ADP, you just use the app and save it to your phone, and then you can upload it right into the mobile app, your documents. So,
in the credit review, obviously once we get the application, we do a credit review. We pull credit. We've actually moved recently to doing soft pulls up front, because people are very, that's sometimes the initial pushback. They're like, I don't want my credit pulled. I don't want my credit pulled. We can do soft pulls now and actually run the automated underwriting. So it's very nice. So we start with soft pulls. That way it's not beating their credit up. The other thing that's been happening over the last couple of years, it's, I might draw a blank on what they're called. It's where the credit bureaus are actually selling borrowers' information to other lenders. And so if we traditionally, if we pull a full credit report, your information would get sold, then you'd get phone calls from 25 online lenders trying to get you. I mean, my wife and I actually just purchased an investment property, and I intentionally did not block my credit stuff to see how many phone calls I get, just to experience what my clients were going through. Crazy. 3-4 days.
It is, but you know, I should have stated this from the beginning, that it's so important when you're getting a pre-approval that you really talk to your real estate agent, your realtor, and say, you know, do you have a preferred lender? We do have preferred lenders, and obviously Dennis is at the top of the list, because it makes it so much easier when you're buying real estate here locally to use a local lender instead of one that might only be available on a phone, maybe, you know, that doesn't work weekends. And, you know, real estate is, I hate to say 24/7, but it works on the weekends too. We work on the weekends. So we need to have a lender that is available and that can even chug out a pre-approval on a weekend if we need to. So by using that app, that really helps us keep the process moving. Because a lot of times we will get phone calls, and for somebody that I'm not even expecting to look at wanting to buy a house, and they're like, hey, we saw this house, we're kind of interested. And I'm like, we need to get pre-approved before we can go any further, because you're looking at a $400,000 house, and you know, you might only qualify for 200,000. So it's really important to find a reputable lender. So didn't mean to interject there. Go right ahead.
I actually was going to touch on that when I
okay.
But yeah, those are called, what I was referring to, they're called trigger leads.
Trigger leads.
Yeah. So by doing soft pull, we avoid the trigger lead and avoid our borrower getting beaten up by all those phone calls. But the credit review is critical. I mean, you know, we've got programs that'll consider down to a 580. So it allows us to move forward with pre-approval, or we would give, you know, some direction. Most people with their credits below 580, a lot of times it's just a couple little small things they need to work on in order to, and that way we can kind of be like, hey, if it was me, I'd be doing this and this and this. And then maybe in 3 to 6 months, we'll be able to look at it again. So, and then, you know, you're pre-approved after that. But the part that you just spoke on that I was going to mention, it's become, I think, more and more critical. And a lot of times buyers don't understand that there is truly a difference between pre-approvals. And the little sentence that some of the newer agents that I meet, that I've been telling them, try, you know, if you get a buyer and they're pre-approved from somewhere that you don't know, out of town, you know, big lender, the ones that you know some of the listing agents aren't going to love, you may want to ask the question, do you want to miss out on your dream home because you have the wrong pre-approval? But that does, I mean, no one wants to miss out on their dream home.
Right.
It then opens the door for the conversation, because they're going to say it's a wrong pre-approval. Yeah. Just the truth of the matter is, right now, if there's 5 offers and they're all similar, and you got a couple from local lenders that the agents know, they're likely to give preference that direction.
Absolutely. Yeah. I didn't mean to steal your thunder there, Wendy, since you wanted to talk about that.
No, I mean, I think it's critical though, because people their offers are being set aside.
Yeah, for sure. So the biggest thing that I wanted you to touch on today is this Fairway Advantage. And so move you out of the way here a little bit. So go right ahead and let's dig right into this.
Yeah, so the Fairway Advantage, you know, we go through the normal process. When we first get the application in, if it looks good, then we'll shoot a pre-qualification letter out. That at least tells the buyer and the real estate agent, hey, we've looked at it, looks like they're good here. That way you have an idea, you can set up their search and, you know, kind of start looking. But then that's the cue for both of us to reach out, you know, and say, okay, we've got the pre-qual letter sent, but we want a pre-approval letter. Right. So there's something that's needed by, you know, Dennis's team to get a pre-approval. Let's make sure we're getting that to them. And then once we get that documentation, then we issue the pre-approval letter. But then if they want to, we can take the extra step. We send them a few electronic disclosures. They sign them electronically. Takes them probably less than 2 minutes. They sign those disclosures electronically. We then send the file to an underwriter, and the underwriter reviews and approves that file as if it's a live loan. But we're using a TBD, to be determined property address.
Yeah.
What that does is it gets it fully underwritten, takes all the risk out from a credit perspective and from an income perspective, because the underwriters review an income, giving us an actual number to work off of. It's not me calculating the income, it's the underwriter, and that number will be honored once they're in contract. So what that does is it allows the real estate agent, when you go to make an offer, to tell the listing agent, this isn't just pre-approved, this is fully underwritten. All we need is title and appraisal to finish this. So what it gives more confidence to the listing agent when they're presenting your offer, because they're able to tell their seller, look, this is fully underwritten. There's no risk here from that side of it. We're just down to appraisal and title. And so if you're especially if you're in a competitive situation, it's huge. Because there's, as we mentioned, not all pre-approvals are the same. So if you've got multiple pre-approvals and one of them says, hey, it's fully underwritten, far less risk in that file.
Mm-hmm.
And, as you and I have discussed, right now in the government lending world, when a buyer is trying to buy with FHA or VA, sometimes the sellers are a little hesitant because they think maybe those buyers aren't quite as qualified. Well, let's get it fully underwritten so that you can tell them, look, the buyer's already fully underwritten, fully approved. So it takes that risk and that worry out of it to try to avoid that offer being set aside. So.
Yeah, it is. It's the hardest thing when we're working with the FHA VA buyers. And so to have them fully underwritten just makes it so much easier. And especially being a local lender, when we're looking at houses in the Ashland, Richland area, it means a whole lot to have your name behind it and Fairway behind that.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
To support the full underwrite, just this last weekend, I got a call from the listing agent. I mean, the benefit of working in a market as long as I have, I know most of the real estate agents.
Yeah.
Well, the listing agent actually picked up the phone and she's like, I think she had 3 or 4 offers. 2 of them were my buyers. And my buyers were being considered. And
Yeah.
she's like, you can't tell me much, but is there anything you can tell me? And I'm like, well, they're both very great buyers, but I will tell you, this one took the step. They're fully underwritten.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, oh, thank you. That's all I needed. And she's like, I'll catch up with you later.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. And so I want to hop back to this first slide when it talks about this Fairway Advantage here. Do you want to touch a little bit on this cash guarantee here?
Yeah, that one is a little bit more involved. We've not used that one as much because the Fairway Advantage tends to do the trick. But
okay,
that one takes a little more effort on the buyer's part.
Okay.
In order to get qualified. But there is a program, if everybody's willing to take the steps, that we'll put money up that if it doesn't close, there's a 10,000 cash give back. So
and then with this Fairway Advantage, I'm seeing here that the closing could be within 10 days.
The closing, as I tell everybody, is as fast as I can get appraisal and title.
Yeah. And your appraisals, how fast are those coming back right now?
I start on those, I got a call last week from a realtor and everybody had negotiated the deal, but the big issue with the transaction was they wanted a 14-day close. And they called and they're like, can you do this? And I'm like, I can, if everybody cooperates and gives me what I ask.
Yep. Gotta have everybody moving in sync.
We order a rush on the appraisal.
Yeah.
So if we request a rush, we can oftentimes get an appraisal back in 3 or 4 days. Now, will the buyer have to pay a little extra for the appraiser? The appraiser will tell us, oh, I'll do this, but I want this much. Where maybe their normal fee is $450. they may want 550 to
Okay,
turn it.
okay.
But we could, that's what we do. That's how we're able
But
to
to
do.
compete with the cash offers that don't have appraisals, is that worth an extra $100 to you? 100, 150, whatever that amount is. Yeah, it could
This
be.
guy was a no-brainer.
Yeah,
The title actually usually holds us up more than anything. That's usually
yeah,
what we get with this title. So
yeah. So that's great. Is there anything else you want to add for any of those programs?
no,
Oh,
they kind of are what they are.
yeah. So
What I,
besides conventional FHA, VA, USDA, anything else in particular program wise you want to mention?
yeah, the OFO, which stands for Ohio Housing Finance Agency.
Okay.
There's always a big push at the beginning of the year for a grant program that the banks have access to.
Mm-hmm.
We have access to this program year round, and it'll
Okay.
actually give the buyer up to 5% of the purchase price to use towards down payment and closing costs. And we've used that program probably more this year than the last 2-3 years combined. We've just found right now there's a lot of buyers out there that are good buyers. They're just short on funds right now,
Mm-hmm.
and this helps get them into a home. And
Mm-hmm.
as you know, with the shortage of housing, I don't see home prices going down anytime soon.
No,
So
no.
the sooner we can help these people get into a home, the more affordable it will be for them. Even
Yeah.
if the rates are a little higher right now, they can always refinance down the road.
Yeah. I will say Dennis is amazing with VA loans. You've got that really locked down in this area. Besides Ashland, Richland counties, where all do you serve for loans?
My main areas are Richland, Ashland, Morrow, Knox. I get down a little into the northern Columbus just because I
Okay.
started my career in Columbus. So I still get some transactions out, but
Yeah.
it's really around here. I can lend anywhere in Ohio.
Okay.
I do. I mean, I get leads all over Ohio. And then I'm also licensed in Florida. We've got people in our branch that are licensed in multiple different states, so we
Okay.
can, but yeah.
Okay. So for anyone that's interested, in the Ashland, Richland, Wayne County areas and beyond, I do have a buyer's guide here to help you, and I can send this to you electronically, or I can pop one in the mail to you if you just reach out. Have a lot of information on lending in here. And then I do also have a home selling guide for those of you that are sellers in the market. As a benefit with Next Home, we also have our 12-foot box truck here, whose name's Lucy. She's available for anyone to use. You do not need to buy or sell with us. However, I would really like it if you did. But we'd love to have you borrow her. She will go anywhere within an hour of our office, and she's free to use. You just got to bring her back with a full tank of gas and cleaned up. But yeah, so I appreciate you coming on with me today, Dennis. It's always great to talk to you. And I think I probably am up next to buy lunch. I'm not sure. But any last parting words you want to say?
No, I just wanted to say, anyone, if there's buyers out there, sellers, you've got to give Wendy and her team a call. They're great to work with.
Thank you. Thank you. Do you want to share your contact information? And I can also put it in the YouTube link as well.
The easiest way to reach me is my cell phone,
Okay.
419-560-6850, and email is dennisreedteam@fairwaymc.com. So
Okay. Well, perfect. Well, thanks everyone for joining us today. My contact information will be down below, but I appreciate you watching, and good luck in finding your next home. Thanks.
thanks, Wendy.